Big news in the bike world today, Bsa is back. Just like Royal Enfield and also Norton got brought back, Bsa was bought by an Indian company called Mahindra, and Mahindra has US dealers. So we're hoping that, like the Royal Enfield, this Bsa will come to the US.
Yeah, that's the hope. So Bsa hasn't made any motorcycles in quite some time. They stopped production back in 1973. Like Kay said, back in 2016, just a few years ago, they were bought by the Mahindra Group, which operates out of India. And under that company, they manage a bunch of different companies, a couple of which deal with like tractors and some big heavy equipment that is sold here through US dealerships in the States. So the hope is that they know what they're doing here in the States, and they'll either bring these bikes into those dealers or create a new Bsa dealership network in the States. We'll just have to wait and see, but for now, we have all the details on this new Gold Star, which is actually a nameplate they're bringing back. It was around from 1939 to 1963 in 350cc and 500cc single-cylinder motorcycles, and that name's back.
Yeah, so this new Gold Star is super retro, so even though it is a new bike that just got revealed, it doesn't look very new, which is a good thing because it's super cool to look at. It's got lots of chrome, old school spoked wheels, analog gauges with a little LCD screen, but if you compare this redesigned, reimagined Gold Star to the Gold Star of the past, there's a lot of similarities. They look like very similar bikes. There's even a funky engine cover that sits at an angle on the new bike that is just like it was in the past, and then the overall design, it looks a lot like the old bike, which is really cool.
Yeah, those engine covers are really a standout of this bike. It definitely looks old school. You don't see anything like that on modern bikes these days. Lots of chrome on the engine covers, but also on the tank as well, just to throw back to that old school style. The main major difference I can see between the new one and the old one is this has a big radiator mounted up front because it is water cooled, which is a little unfortunate. It takes away from the look a little bit, but it's not too bad.
Yeah, I think they did a good job of making that radiator not stick out too much. It's not got a big ugly shroud around it, so as subtle as it could be. And it's kind of interesting. They still have heat fins on the motor as if it were an air-cooled block, so it retains some of that old school style even though it is water-cooled.
And I think they had to do that. This bike wouldn't look the same without those fins up at the top. So.
Yeah, it wouldn't look very old school at all if it didn't have that.
Pretty cool look. I'm also loving the exhaust on this bike. Definitely super old school, just a super skinny silver pipe that pretty much goes the entire length of the bike. You don't see that too often. But let's jump into kind of the details on this motor. What are we looking at?
Absolutely. It's a 652cc single-cylinder engine. It's got 45 horsepower and 41 pound-feet of torque. So all of that is pretty old school. That's not a big power figure, but it is dual overhead cam, so it's 4-valve. It's also liquid-cooled, like we mentioned, 5-speed transmission, and a slip assist clutch. So kind of a mix of new and old school design and technology, nothing crazy, but modern enough, dual overhead cam, which is pretty nice to have.
Should be pretty reliable, hopefully, given that it's got some modern tech, but it is a British bike, so we'll see. 3.2 gallon fuel tank on this motorcycle, and Bsa is estimating a 71 mile per gallon figure on that. So not the most fuel efficient bike, but pretty decent. And then as far as brakes go, Brembo brakes front and rear, which is pretty cool. So you have a 320 millimeter disc in the front and a 255 millimeter disc in the rear, dual piston caliper up front and a single piston caliper in the rear, and then suspension, 41 millimeter front forks, and then twin rear shocks to go with that old school theme. The rear shocks are adjustable for preload only, but not much adjustability as far as suspension goes. I don't think that's a big problem. This is not a performance machine.
No, this is not like a track bike. You also get an 18-inch front wheel and a 17-inch rear, so it's staggered, which I think gives it a little bit more of an old school stance. ABS is standard, which is nice to have, and that's a really good modern feature that's becoming more and more standard, as it should be. It's good to have that safety tech to get you to a stop safely. This bike is also going to be available in red, silver, black, and green, but that chrome tank, that's pretty cool. Yeah. I feel like that's a very British thing.
The chrome tank's where it's at. I haven't seen an image of all 4 colors yet, and hopefully I can find them. I'll flash them up on the screen. So I'm not sure if that tank carries over from color to color, but if it doesn't, this is the one to get with the chrome tank.
Now, pricing has not yet been announced because this bike just was revealed, but it should be available, that information, in early 2022. And like we said, we're not sure if it's coming to the US yet, but it would make sense if it did, because this bike competes very, very closely, or it will compete very closely, with the Royal Enfield INT 650.
Yeah, and if we look at that bike with this side by side, you'll see that a lot of the specs are comparable. So I think we can kind of get an idea of where this new BSA Gold Star is going to fall in terms of pricing by looking at this Royal Enfield, because they have to be competitive, even if it's not brought to the US.
Yeah, we're hoping that they will be competitive, because that's one of the nice things about the Royal Enfield is it's a really affordable bike. So some of the similar specs, the Royal Enfield has a 648cc engine. This BSA has a 652cc engine. It's 47 horsepower and 38 pound-feet of torque on the Enfield versus 45 and 41 on the BSA, so very similar power figures.
But a little bit of a different setup. We have a parallel twin in the Royal Enfield.
Versus a single cylinder.
Exactly.
The Enfield also has a 6-speed transmission, not a 5-speed like the BSA, but punch for punch, the BSA has full-on Brembo brakes, whereas the Royal Enfield has bi-bray brakes. So some differences, but they are very similarly spec'd. And the Royal Enfield starts at $6,000. If you get the fancy chrome tank, it's $7,000, which is a really affordable price mark to be at. So we're hoping that this BSA is roundabout that mark. And judging by how similar the rest of these specs are, there's probably a good chance that'll be in that range.
Yeah, I think there's a pretty good chance of that. The chances of it coming to the US, not really feeling as strong about that. But we're going to be hopeful, and hopefully you guys are too. Cross your fingers, and maybe we'll see BSA make a return to the US.
Yeah, exactly. Maybe write to them, petition, make it happen. I bet Tommy would be excited about that, because not only does he have a love for every type of British vehicle, he has 2 minis right now. He always has Land Rovers. But Roman and Tommy actually used to have a BSA.
Yeah.
An old one.
Yeah, we did a little video series. It was well before you and my time here. We had nothing to do with that. But it's a pretty cool series if you want to go check it out. Definitely more of the old school video style and not as highly produced. But yeah, you can get a good idea for what these old school motorcycles are like by checking that out.
So if they bring it back, maybe we'll have one at the office. I bet Roman and Tommy wouldn't be able to hold themselves back.
I can pretty much guarantee if this bike comes to the States, we're going to have one pretty much day one. It's available.
Yeah, so we have that to look forward to.
Yeah. All right, well, thanks for watching, guys. Don't forget to head on over to tfl-studios.com so you don't miss any of the content across all of our channels, and we'll catch you in the next video.